Under the wavering lamp at 8th and Willow, the rain kept its patient rhythm, tapping the plexiglass roof until it sounded like a soft drumline for all the small, tired things in the city. Marlene watched the street the way you watch a door you're not sure will open. She had learned to count silence the way other people count money. How many quiet minutes she could afford before she had to move. How many seconds of stillness before someone's eyes lingered too long. The jacket they'd given her last week held a quilted warmth that surprised her each time she pulled it close, as if kindness had a temperature and she was still getting used to it. In the pocket, her fingers found a safety pin, a stub of pencil, a folded flyer soft as cloth from being handled. She smoothed the creases with her thumb like a habit, though she didn't read the words. She already knew them. Warm hands. Late. Runs. Coats, blankets, tea. Across the street, the bakery window was dark, but the doorway glowed just enough to frame Ezra's shape as he shouldered a stack of boxes and nudged the van door with his elbow. He did everything with that same unhurried competence, like a man who had learned that haste never saved the day, it only made you drop things. When he crossed the street, he didn't come with the flourish of a rescuer or the sales pitch of a volunteer who needed your gratitude to justify his time. Came like weather, steadily, predictably, is willing to sit beside your life without rearranging it. Bus is running late, he said, tilting his head toward the empty road. It's a bus, she answered, and even in the dryness of it he heard the smallest joke. He smiled, not wide, just a crease beside one eye. You warm enough? She touched the zipper under her chin. Warmer than I was. It's a good kind of math, he said. It's better than the kind I used to do. What kind was that? It's the kind where you count what you don't have and call it a plan? He shrugged. Doesn't work, it turns out. She didn't say it, but she knew that arithmetic well. The shelter beds you didn't get, the job you almost had. The next month's rent in a city where months were taller than you were. Passed him and watched water stream through the gutter. You do this every night? She asked. Not every, he said. Most more in winter. People think cold is obvious, but it's the damp that gets under the door. She nodded because she felt it too, the way damp crept into your thinking until even the good memories came out wrinkled. A minute passed, without either of them trying to mend it. A city bus groaned somewhere far off, then changed its mind, and turned down another street. He didn't ask her story. The last time someone had asked, she'd given them the short version. Then the longer one, when their face softened, then the quiet afterward that felt worse than if they'd walked away. Tonight. She was grateful for a man who let conversation stop where it wanted. A volunteer from the van came over with paper cups and a thermos that hissed when the lid twisted. Steam unwound into the rain. Mint or ginger, the volunteer said. Ginger, Ezra answered, then glanced at Marlene. Or mint. Your call. She reached for the cup, her fingers steadier in the warmth. The first sip loosened the tight muscles along her jaw, the way music loosens a room. Ginger's like a little fire, she said. He tapped his cup to hers. A quiet toast? 2 little fires? The bus finally appeared like a rumor turning true lights hazy in the mist, wipers beating time. She stood. Ezra stepped back, giving her the lane to decide. At the door, she looked over her shoulder. Thank you, she said, then added, as if the word surprised her, for not making it a big deal. He nodded. Some things are smaller on purpose. The door sighed open. She climbed the steps, paid in coins that clinked aloud, in the empty bus, and took a seat by the window. As the bus pulled away, Ezra lifted his cup. She held her own up in answer, a glassless clink through the rain. The days that followed braided themselves into the kind of time you only notice later. When you realize it's gotten a little easier to breathe, Marlene found a daytime rhythm library. In the morning, where she learned to love the smell of old paper like it was bread, to church pantry on Tuesdays that gave out fruit with bruises like small moons, a laundromat where on Thursdays, if you got there early enough, the woman with the silver braid would let you run one load for free as long as you walked to the corner store and back with her. The jacket changed how she moved. It wasn't magic, but it was a barrier against wind, against being visibly cold, against the pity of strangers. She still kept careful counted bus transfers. Watched the clock, but the panic had eased from a scream to a hum. Sometimes she saw the van pop in too. Her day like a recurring character in a show she didn't realize she'd loved. Clinic one morning, Ezra was kneeling to tie a boy's shoelace as the boy's mother balanced a sleeping toddler on her hip. Another afternoon, he was in the back of the van labeling 3 boxes with a black marker, hats, gloves, notes. When she passed, he lifted the marker like a wave, and she was close enough to see a smudge of ink on his thumb that made him look like a school kid. The first time they talked longer than a hello stood, quietly in the doorway of the bakery. It was 2 in the afternoon, and the rain had taken a break, leaving the world rinsed and fragile. The bakery door was propped open to let out the heat, and the fragrance of sugar and yeast drifted onto the sidewalk. Marlene hovered, unsure if lingering near something warm without buying counted as stealing. A woman inside with a face the shape of a welcome mat said, "Croissants are coming out. If you stand there, you'll make the city smell better." And she went back to her tray. Ezra appeared from the back with a roll of blue painter's tape and a piece of cardboard. He wrote in thick letters, "Daily donations. Take what you need. Leave what you can." He taped the sign to a crate near the door, then stepped out and saw her. "You can blame me if anyone asks," he said, as though she'd already argued with him. "I'm very blamable. It's my best quality." She raised an eyebrow. "Your best. I have a limited catalog." When she didn't move, he reached into the crate and pulled out a paper bag, folded at the top. Pulled it open, so the smell of butter floated up. "Hot is better when it's hot," he said. Another law of good math. She took the bag because he made it small enough to take. "You always talk like that?" She asked around a bite she tried to make dainty, and failed. "Like what?" "Like you're trying not to scare off a bird." He considered. "Most of the time, I'm trying not to scare off myself." That drew something from her, a sound that wasn't exactly laughter and wasn't far from it. She licked a bit of butter from her thumb, and the gesture startled her with its intimacy. "You forgot sometimes that your body still knew how to enjoy food. Do you own this place?" "Belongs to a woman named Pilar." She took a chance on warm hands when it was just a list in a notebook and a broken coffee thermos. "I help haul, fix, unload. Titles don't mean much here. What does? Who shows up?" The words landed. With their own small weight, she thought of the last 2 years as a chain of days when someone didn't show up, an employer who stopped calling, a landlord who discovered a better tenant in the form of a couple with perfect teeth and a dog, the man she loved who left without slamming the door, which somehow made the quiet worse. There was the bigger before, too, the one with the hospital corridor, and a nurse whose voice was so gentle it ruined her, because it made the impossible sound like bedtime. She didn't say any of it. She ate another bite, eyes closing against. "The heat ever bake?" he asked. "Not really," she said. "I can follow directions, the kind that come on the side of a box." She paused. "I used to clean rooms, hotels. You learn people from their trash." He nodded. "You learn people from what they leave for later." "What do you leave?" she asked. "Notes," he said. Apparently, he showed her the black-streaked thumb, and she smiled. "You missed a spot." That night, the rain returned with a determination that soaked through umbrellas and made everyone a little shorter. The van did its circuit, under the bridge on Maple where wind collected like another kind of person. Behind the transit station where cardboard palaces rose and fell overnight, 2 blocks down from the hospital where the lamps were too bright to feel kind. Marlene rode a bus to the end of the line and back because the driver on that route let her stay if she sat quiet and didn't ask questions when he changed the sign. Near midnight, at a stop where the shelter's roof chattered with rain, she saw a man in a thin hoodie arguing with himself. He had the angry shoulders of someone whose thoughts don't take turns. The argument ended when his teeth began to chatter. Marlene stood, walked to the second row, where an old woman in a lavender hat always boarded, and left the spare blanket from her tote on the seat as if she'd forgotten it. When the man boarded 2 stops later, loud with cold, found the blanket by accident, and swore less loudly after that. In the following week, Ordinary things became a sequence of small proofs that life hadn't closed to a pinhole. The librarian, with the crispy voice, started holding back a stack of job listing printouts that didn't insult your intelligence. The woman with the silver braid from the laundromat taught Marlene the trick of adding a glug of vinegar to the rinse water when your clothes had seen too much rain. A bus driver with hands the size of dinner plates carried an extra thermos and poured from it without looking, so no one had to. Say thank you out loud. Ezra, for his part, kept showing up. Once, she watched him guide an elderly veteran through the paperwork for a housing waitlist that might take a year. And he did it without lying about the time, without promising more than was true, but also without letting the man fold into that quick despair people use when the word year catches in their throat. Ezra had a way of turning time into steps. 2 signatures today. 1 appointment next week. A coat you wear. Now, not after you deserve it. On a Wednesday. Marlene stood by the bakery window watching swirls of flour in the sunlit air. A little girl in a rainbow coat pressed her palms to the glass, breath fogging a circle, and whispered, "Sugar snow." Inside, Pilar laughed and pressed a heart-shaped pastry cutter into a sheet of dough. "Sugar snow," she repeated, and the phrase felt like a ribbon tying the morning together. Ezra was scribbling labels again and cursing under his breath at a marker that had betrayed him. Marlene found a marker in her tote, one she'd been given at the library, untapped. "The cardboard with it, trade," she said. He looked up, saw the glint of humor, and took the pen like a man accepting a favor from a shy friend. "You just saved 3 boxes from anonymity," he said. "That's a public service." She took the dull marker, uncapped it, and blew through the nib for luck. That childish gesture embarrassed her, and she laughed to cover it. "Tell me about warm hands," she said, and surprised herself by wanting to know. "Started with coats," he said.
My.
"After my sister passed, I found her winter stuff in the back of a closet and thought, somebody needs this more than the dust does. After I dropped the first bag at a shelter, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Turns out, grief makes you useful if you let it. People gave me more than I could carry, and then it was either stop or find a way to keep what was good about it without drowning in it." "What was your sister like?" The question fell out of her mouth with a gentleness that surprised both of them. He leaned against the doorframe. "Loud in a way that made rooms safer," he said. "The kind of person who sings the wrong lyrics and dares the world to correct her." He smiled at the memory, as if it were a dog that had finally returned. "She hated gloves," said. They took the feeling out of fingertips. He looked down at his hands, thought, "Fine, we'll name it after what's left." "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it in that specific way you mean it when someone gives you a true thing and you know you have no equal thing to give back. "That's the nice kind of sorry," said. "The kind you don't have to fix." She told him one thing in exchange. Not the hospital corridor, not the before that had blown her life to pieces, with a quietness so complete it felt like a conspiracy. She told him about a motel en route, 27, where she worked nights before the city, where the neon E flickered and made the word vacancy look like an inside joke. She told him how she learned the art of getting coffee stains out of mysterious fabrics, how she could tell when a guest had cried by the way the pillowcase stuck to itself in the dryer. "People think crying is water," she said, "but it's salt. It leaves marks." He nodded like she'd taught him something he'd been trying to learn. He didn't ask for the rest. He might have wanted to, but he held the question like a candle far enough away not to burn. That night, the van made a stop by the hospital entrance. It was shift change, and the glass-walled lobby glowed with the tired promise of fluorescent light. Marlene wasn't there for anyone, but she stood at the edge of the lobby anyway, listening to the hum of vending machines and the soft hiss of sliding doors. Waiting rooms had a smell she could name without thinking: coffee that had been brave too long, paper that had met too many hands, a sweet floral note from someone's diluted perfume. Ezra came through the doors carrying a box of kits, nothing glamorous. Just socks rolled tight, toothbrush, travel soap, a note printed in a font easy to read that said "You matter" in the kind of voice that didn't shout or whisper. He handed one to a teenager pacing a slow line of worry outside the ICU, then tucked one gently beside a woman sleeping with her mouth open, the way exhausted people do when their bodies finally betray their pride. "You don't know them," Marlene said, when he stepped back outside. "Sometimes you give a thing and it fits," he said. "Sometimes it doesn't. We try again. That's the only trick I know. What if they're angry? Anger is warmer than nothing." He lifted a shoulder. "You can build a fire with it if you're careful." They stood there a long time, breath making small clouds in the air that drifted together, separated, drifted together again. A nurse came out for a quick lungful of cold. She looked at their coats, at the boxes that said notes in Ezra's block letters, and gave a tired thumbs up that felt like a blessing from someone licensed to give them. Winter broke without ceremony, rain shifting slowly toward a run of days. Could walk through without hunching. In that gentle change, time rearranged itself with new furniture. Marlene started waking earlier just to stand in the square of sunlight that fell onto the library table at 10. She filled out applications she had ignored for months because the rejection had felt inevitable. She wrote a list of references and put Ezra's number on it, then crossed it out, then put it back, then drew a tiny star beside it like a charm. When she turned the page, she drew another star for herself, surprised to find that she wanted to keep it. On a Sunday, the bakery hosted something Pilar called a mending hour. No one advertised it, but word leaked the way warm smells do. People wandered in with buttons and stories. A man who worked nights brought a coat with a missing zipper and left with a coat that closed. A woman who had been quiet all winter sat at the window and darned a pair of socks like she was repairing a small map. Marlene took a seat with a needle and a torn pocket and only pricked herself twice. Ezra sat across from her with a cardboard sign that once had said hats and now said stories in the same strong letters. People wrote snippets, names, a single sentence to put in a box. "When I was little, my mother kept bread in the oven to stay warm. I saved my brother with a plastic bag turned into a kite. I can fall asleep if someone hums off-key." He didn't read them aloud, just slid them into the box with care. "Insurance," he said, when she asked. "For when the day forgets what people are." At the end of the hour, Pilar brought out a tray of lemon cookies and called them sunshine. In circles, the room laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that takes the hard edges off a day. Marlene put one in her pocket for later, then ate it immediately and laughed at herself. When she stood to leave, Ezra handed her a jacket tag that had been misprinted Warm Hands. Read Warm Lands. She ran her thumb over the crooked letter. "What am I supposed to do with this?" she asked. "Whatever you want," he said. "It inside your pocket, trade it for a better day. Make a bookmark. Letters get things wrong all the time. We use them anyway." She tied it inside her pocket where the string didn't show, a secret word carrying a secret heat. The bus, she rubbed the tag like a talisman and realized she was smiling at nothing visible. A man passing with a stack of pizza boxes grinned back because smiles are an easy language. A week later, the city got hit with a cold snap that surprised everyone just when they were bragging about spring. The air felt thin, like someone had taken a scoop out of it. The van ran late supply run, a flat tire, a volunteer whose mother had fallen. When it finally pulled up to 8th and Willow, Marlene was already there, breath making neat little ghosts in the air. She saw Ezra climb from the driver's seat and slam the door with the force you use on a day that won't cooperate. He turned, saw her, and the annoyance drained like a leak plugged with a thumb. "You doing okay tonight?" he asked. "Better." "With Ginger," she said. He snapped his fingers. "I have just the thing." They stood side by side, sipping heat. The volunteers slid the van door open and began handing out jackets. The words on the tags from Warm Hands glowed against the night like honest advertising. A teenage boy with a buzz cut rolled the sleeves of his too big coat and pretended he'd meant to get one a size up. A woman with a stroller tucked a blanket around the child so precisely you'd think she was folding paper cranes. A man with a spray of white in his beard took a hat and pulled it low over ears that had been red for weeks. No speeches, no slogans, only the quick, efficient choreography of people who had decided that small warmth was an emergency. Marlene watched Ezra move through the quiet chaos with a competence that never announced itself. He touched shoulders lightly when he needed to, made jokes low enough not to embarrass anyone. Learned names the way careful people learn recipes' ingredients first, then the order they make sense in. When the last of the jackets were claimed, and the van looked satisfyingly empty, he found her again by the bus sign where the schedule had been torn off and taped back a dozen times. "You never took one of the notes," he said. "Notes. The ones in the box. Pick one at random." "It's dangerous," she said. "Only the good kind." She reached into the small cardboard carton he held and felt papers brush her, fingers like the wings of cautious moths. She pulled one and unfolded it. "In winter, my father boiled orange peels for the smell." She read and had to look away for a second from nothing in particular. She folded the note and slid it into the inner pocket where the Warm Lands tag lived. "Insurance," she said. "Exactly. What's yours?" she asked. He pulled a note of his own, read it, smiled, and shook his head. "This one's too." "True. Read it anyway," she said, gentle but insistent. And he heard the kindness inside the nudge. He cleared his throat. "Someone asked if I was okay, and I was not, and then I was a little more okay." They stood with that between them, letting the sentence be as heavy and as light as it was. A bus groaned up, tired and late and precisely on time. The doors opened. With a sound like relief, she stepped up, then turned back. "You know," she said, "when you asked the first night, I wanted to lie. I would have let you." She smiled a quiet curve that made her look for a breath like a girl who had once kept bread in an oven to keep it warm. "Thank you for asking anyway." "Any time," he said. It meant exactly that. Without making it a vow, he couldn't. "Keep?" The bus moved. She took her seat and watched him through the smeared window, the way he lifted a hand without waving, a gesture that meant "I'm here," not goodbye. She pressed her palm to the glass, felt the cool meet her heat, and thought about how, lately, the glass felt thinner everywhere. Spring, when it did come, came sideways, sprigs of green and the cracks of old stone, a robin arguing with a puddle, the sun prying under the edge of clouds like a busy ant pulling back curtains. Warm hands switched from coats to lighter layers and rolled blankets tight with twine. Marlene began a trial shift at the bakery mornings, when the city still wore night around the edges. Pilar showed her how to slide trays in at an angle too, make the heat move, how to listen for the exact moment a crust sings. On her second day, a sheet of rolls came out a shade too dark. Pilar shrugged. "Some people like their sweetness tiny bit bitter," she said, and put the tray in the donation crate. Marlene tucked a roll into her jacket pocket and walked to the bus stop with a new kind of steam trailing behind her. There were still hard days. The city didn't stop being expensive just because it was less cold. Paperwork got lost the way. Socks do. One morning, the library printer chewed her resume and spat it out like a warning from a fortune teller. Another day, a man on the bus said something ugly and then laughed when no one laughed with him. She still had nights when sleep arrived with the manners of a thief and left before morning with everything good in its hands. But the bad days had company now. She could say them out loud to someone who understood that sharing a burden isn't the same as moving it onto someone else's back. On a warm evening that smelled like oranges and street dust, Warm Hands hosted a small gathering in the alley beside the bakery. Someone strung a line of mismatched bulbs overhead. Someone else set out folding chairs that clicked as if they were hesitant to trust themselves. A chalkboard leaned against the wall. Stories and soup. A little music, no speeches. Ezra tuned a guitar that he didn't know very well. Pilar brought out a pot of broth that tasted like confidence. People drifted in the way you enter a scene. You don't want to burden sideways, quietly, but with hope. Aline stood by the door for a long minute, fingers worrying the Warm Lands tag hidden in her pocket, then stepped into the light. A man recited a poem about a bus pass. A teenager sang the first verse of a song and forgot the rest and kept going anyway, which made the chorus when it found him sound like a rescue. A woman told a joke so old it was new again, and everyone laughed like they were in on it. Then Ezra nodded at Marlene as if to say, "You don't have to." She nodded back as if to say, "I know," and still she stepped forward. She didn't tell. The hospital story. She told the sugar snow one. She talked about vinegar in the rinse, about the way a jacket changes the shape of your day, about a note pulled from a box and how sometimes the exact words you need get clever and hide in someone else's handwriting until you find them. When she finished, no one clapped in a way that made her feel on display. They clapped like rain. On a warm roof, Ezra leaned the guitar against a crate and came to stand beside her. "You're good at telling the truth without making it heavier," he said. "I'm practicing," she said. "It's harder than lying. More useful, too," he said. They sat on the curb. The alley lights hummed. A little girl danced in a circle. Everyone pretended not to see so she could keep being brave. Marlene took the folded flyer from her, pocketed the one she'd kept like a relic hand, smoothed it across her knee. Then she tore it neatly in half and handed one piece to Ezra. "What's this?" he asked. "Proof," she said. "Of what?" "That someone saw me when I thought I was invisible." She tucked her half back into her pocket, and on impulse she would have been too careful for a month ago, took out the note about orange peels. She handed it to him. "I think this was yours the whole time." He shook his head. "It's yours. Now, then keep it for me," she countered, and he understood the honor she was giving. He folded the paper twice, like a prayer, and slid it into his wallet behind a photograph of a woman whose smile was loud later. When the chairs had been stacked and the lights wound down, they walked together toward 8th and Willow. The city had a different voice at that hour, softer around the edges, as if all the sharp things had to rest too. At the bus stop, Marlene touched the plexiglass roof with her fingertips and felt the warmth that had stored from the bulbs. She remembered the first night, the wet bench, the tremor in her voice, the generosity she almost refused out of habit. She felt the weight of the jacket, not as armor now, but as history. "You know," she said, "I used to think noticing was dangerous." "It is," he said. "It's how things start." She smiled. The bus sighed up to the curb, opened its doors with that same tired grace. She stepped on, turned, and didn't wave. Looked at him in that full-faced way people reserve for mirrors and children. He lifted his chin in an answer older than words. When she sat, she slipped a small square from her pocket a photograph Pilar had taken earlier that evening with a camera older than everybody. In it, Marlene was laughing with her head thrown back, unafraid of how her throat looked when she did. Ezra was turned slightly toward her, mid-sentence, hands lifted as if adjusting an invisible note on a page. The string of bulbs made halos. Of their hair? In the corner, someone's hand was reaching for a bowl of soup, like a small act of faith. She traced the edge of the photo with her thumb, then slid it into the inner pocket beside warm lands, where it whispered against the fabric each time. The bus jolted as the city unspooled outside the window, non-washing out to soft blue concrete. Sighing into the last of the day, she rested her forehead against the cool glass and let the motion rock her. Healing didn't feel like a finish line. It felt like this: a seat taken, a jacket zipped, a note kept, a person who asks once and then again, without turning the question into a spotlight. It felt like walking past the bus stop tomorrow and seeing a new face, a new stillness. And feeling in her pocket the corner of a photograph that said, "There is a way to be the person who notices without breaking yourself open each time." It felt like the knowledge that when the rain returned and there would also be a van that smelled faintly of laundry soap and lemon cookies, and hands that were not always warm but always willing. Outside, the last of the puddles caught the light and held it. Inside, Marlene breathed in and out, and the breath didn't catch. When the bus slowed near the library, she pulled the cord and stood. In the reflected glass, she saw herself not as an outline dissolving into weather, but as a person with weight and edges, carrying something that wasn't only loss. She pressed the photo once, a silent promise, and stepped into the night that felt against all practical forecasts, just a touch warmer than it used to be.